Welcome back, super friends. Today we are going to be adding fractions with unlike denominators. What that means is that our denominators won't be the same. We'll have to find common denominators, make equivalent fractions, then add our new fraction. So what you'll need for today is your math notebook or folder, pencil to write with, and don't forget that super brain of yours. Stay tuned for the video. All right, super friends, we are going to be adding fractions with unlike denominators. What that means is that the denominators will not be the same number. We have to make equivalent fractions and then add them. So in order for us to do that, we have 3 steps. It's the same 3 steps every time. It'll be the same 3 steps when we subtract in our next lesson. What we do, and that only works for adding and subtracting. For multiplying or dividing, it doesn't work this way. Multiplying and dividing are way easier, but let's focus on the adding and subtracting first. So our first step is to find common denominators. We know how to do that. That means we're getting our multiples for each denominator, and then we circle the first one that's the same. The first number that's the same is what we use. Then we make equivalent fractions for each of the fractions that we're using so that they could have the same denominator. And lastly, we add the new fractions that we made. So let's go ahead and get started. We have our first example here, and it says 1/4 plus 3/7. All right, so let's get started. So far, what I'm doing is my step 1. Step 1 is to get our multiples, right? So I have 4 and 7, and I'm going to stop at the first number that's the same. So let me do my 4s. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36. I'm going to stop there just because I ran out of space. Let's see if I would need to keep going. So let's move on to our 7s. Looking at the 7s, we have 7, 14, plus 3, or times 3, 21, 28, 35. Should I keep going, or do I see a number that's the same? So far, I see 28 and 28. Those are the same, so that means that that's my common denominator. Common denominator, I'm just going to call it CD for common denominator, is 28. So that means that's a new fraction, that's a new denominator that I want. So we just did step 1. Step 1. Let's do step 2, which was make equivalent fractions. So making our equivalent fractions, I like to label it. You won't always have to do this, but I do that while we're learning. Equivalent fractions. Okay, so now what I do is I just recreate the original that I have here, the original equation. And then what I do is I put equal, not equal signs, but like arrows to show the new fractions that we're making. So let's start with the 4s. Okay, in order for my 4 to equal 28, what do I have to multiply by? 4 times what? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 4 times 7 equals 28. That's the new denominator now. And remember, we learned that whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So now I have 1 times 7. What does that equal? That equals 7. So now my new fraction is 7 over 28. I'm still adding. All right, let's go over to the 7s. So like we were looking at earlier, we see that 4 times 7 equals 28. So obviously 7 times 4 equals 28. Sometimes that doesn't always work out. Sometimes it'll be different numbers that we're multiplying by. Like it won't just be what the other denominator was. But in this case it is. So thankfully that works out for us. And what does that equal? 28. We already learned that. And again, whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So 3 times 4 equals, what is that? 12. Awesome. That's our second new fraction. So now I have 12 over 28. So now this we can add because the denominators are the same. We got it. We did it. Wasn't that painful. It was pretty painless. Now let's go ahead and do our step 3, which is just to add. So step 3, add new fractions. And get your answer. Woohoo! So our new fractions are 7/28 plus 12/28. What does that give us? Well, 28 stays the same, obviously. And what is 7 plus 12? Ooh, that quick math. Yep, you're correct. It is 19. So our new answer is 19/28. There we go. As we get more practice with this, we'll learn to simplify our fractions, and that means just to make our fractions smaller so that we're not dealing with big numbers, but we'll learn that as we continue the units. All right, next example. So our next example says 4/12 plus 2/3. This one I already feel good about because I know my 12 facts and I know my 3 facts. So I'm feeling great. So let's start with our step 1. Step 1 means we're trying to get our denominator to be the same. So I want the multiples for my 3's and my 12. So let's start with the 3's. I have 3, 6, 9, 12. Miss Choice, don't be lazy. 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27. And because I ran out of space, I'm going to stop right there. Normally, I stop because I run out of space. Usually, that's about around the time that we basically find our common denominator. So let's do our 12s. So I have 12, 24. Oh, do I even need to keep going? You're correct. I do not need to keep going because I already have my common denominator. I see it right here. It's the 24. It's 24 and 24. So we're done. That's our common denominator. So that's going to be our new denominator that we're using. So let's do step 2. All right, let's go to our step 2. Step 2 is where we make our equivalent fractions. So make oh my goodness, Miss Choice. Equivalent fractions. That was a weird looking F. Oh well. All right, so what I do is I write my original 4/12 plus 2/3, and then I like to just turn them into the new ones. So there we go. Now, looking at that, what was our common denominator that we had? It was 24. So now I need to do, I'm going to start with my smaller number, so 3. So 3 times what gives me 24? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3 times 8 gives me 24. And then whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 2 times 8 equals, I know my 2's, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. 16. So now that's one new fraction. 16/24. We are still adding. All right, let's do the last one. 12 times what gives me 24? Oh, easy peasy. 1, 2. 12 times 2 gives me 24. Now, whatever I do at the bottom, let's do to the top. 4 times 2 equals, oh, that's easy, 8. So now that's our second new fraction, 8/24. And now what do we do next? Of course, it's our step 3, which is adding them. That's the easy part. So let's take our 8/24 plus our 16/24. What do we get? So what is 8 plus 16? Well, first of all, let's do the easy part, the denominator. That equals 24, of course, because it doesn't change. We worked so hard to get it to equal 24. We're not changing it anymore after that. So now we have 8 plus 16. Miss Joyce, I don't know that. Can you just solve it to the side? Of course. 16 plus 8. That's a 4. Regroup. That's a 2. Oh, interesting. We have 4/24. What does that equal again when we have the denominator and the numerator and it's the same number? Duh, that equals 1 whole. So our answer would be 1 whole here. Good job. So we're using these 3 steps to go ahead and solve our problems for today.